bag.
You know what day it is today?
It's Tuesday.
Do you know what we do on Tuesdays?
We do Anatomy Tuesdays.
Yes, let's go.
Sweet.
What should we cover this week?
You're not wearing shoes, I'm not wearing shoes. Let's do feet.
Oh, I'm not wearing shoes. Let's cover the feet, baby. Let's do it.
Alright, let's dive in. So, we gotta summarize the feet because there's so much going on. Each foot has 26 bones, 33 joints, and over 100 muscles, tendons, ligaments, all those structures. So, we're just gonna summarize it. Super important to note that the foot, the ankle, the calf are all one big complex. We got muscles running from the back of our leg, front of our leg, into the top and bottom of our foot. So, it kind of all goes together, but we're gonna just dive in. Feet has 4 layers of muscles. A couple of important ones I want to cover. Tibialis anterior. It's going to be important in dorsiflexing the foot. Tibialis posterior going to be important for plantar flexion, and it's also going to support the arch. We have flexors and extensors that are going to flex and extend our toes and give us support and balance. And then we have a sheet of connective tissue that runs underneath our foot. It's called our plantar fascia. Super important and a common injury, but that's again going to be really important in stabilizing our foot. The arch of our foot, helping us absorb and displace forces. Again, we just gotta cover the importance of the foot this week. It is the basis for all of our athletic movements. It's the key to a healthy chain, and we're excited to dive in.
Let's really dive into the athletic movement part over here. So here on Anatomy Tuesdays, if there's 2 things you're probably sick of us talking about, it's lacrosse balls and string theories, but we're gonna cover both of them right here.
Can't get enough.
Can't get enough of lacrosse ball and string theory. So, Mark mentioned it a little bit, but we're going to dive deeper into this, is everything starts with the foot. Little test here you guys can do at home is Mark's going to put this right underneath his foot. First he's going to do a little hamstring stretch test here. So this is initial pre-test here, stretch in there, that's how far you can reach. A test at home, just rolling out the bottom of your feet. All this is going to show is just how connected your foot is to the rest of your body. So you spend a little bit of minute and a half rolling out aggressively the bottoms of your feet. And when you retest after this, what you'll see, and we had Marcus, our cameraman, do this, is you gain range of motion in those hamstrings and the full stretch throughout that. So what that's telling us is everything is connected in our body, and the first point of contact of our body to the ground to any movement that we do is our foot. So we really have to take care of our foot. If we feel any knee pain, hip pain, and a lot of times you even see this in a pressing motion or our upper back tightness, is that it starts way down at the ankles, which blows a lot of people's minds, but this is why it's so important. So Mark's done rolling out the bottoms of our feet here. When we retest, we can go all the way down and we gain range of motion all the way down to our hands here.
It actually does feel a lot better.
Yeah, it's amazing. Marcus, how did it feel when we did it with you?
It felt good.
It felt great, yeah. So this is just showing us that everything, so you're sick of us hearing to talk about this, but everything is connected with our foot and we need to take care of it.
Okay, so when we're looking at the foot, we're really talking about 3 main functions. It's going to be weight bearing, it's going to be shock absorption, and it's going to be propulsion. That propulsion is going to push us, horizontally, laterally, vertically, all that kind of stuff. So when we're looking at sports, how does that transition to sports?
Yeah, so athletically, we need to look at 2 things here. 1, the mobility of the ankle, and 2, the strength of the connective tissue down there, and fascia, and the strength of the foot, all of it together. 1, mobility. Why is this so important? It's the positions that foot is being able to put in. When you look at really, really good running backs like Walter Payton, Adrian Peterson, you see their shin angles, and when they're pressing off, their foot and ankle is mobile. It's able to get into a good position. But another thing that you see with these really, really elite level athletes that you don't see in lower level athletes is the strength and the force they're able to produce through this ankle. So we talked about a little bit in the calf video, but when they're pushing force through that ankle, 1, they're able to get into that position, and then 2, they're able to explode out without any twisting. So what you'll see in a lower level athlete is that foot bleeding. They're bleeding force through. A lot of times that leads to knee and hip pain later, but it's also inefficiencies in our movement pattern. So our body's not strong enough to be able to get in that position, or is not getting in the position originally, and then we're bleeding out. So 2 things we'll talk about in a little bit is how can we get more mobile in this joint, and how can we get stronger in this joint.
Okay, so one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is the proprioceptive ability of the feet. Like Austin said earlier, the feet are really, in the vast majority of sports, the only thing that's coming into contact with the ground. So the feet are really telling us where we are in space, our positioning, and everything like that. So if that message isn't getting relayed from the feet to the brain, we got a problem. One of those things that's really going to affect our proprioception, and it has been for a long time, is the fact that we wear shoes. And we wear shoes from pretty much the day we're born till now, all the time. So what that does when we're in shoes, comfortable shoes with supportive arches and orthotics, whatever it is it kind of takes away that proprioception and that functional strength of the feet. So we need to try to regain that, and I think a great rule of thumb is to be barefoot whenever possible and try to, you know, allow the muscles, tendons, ligaments, structures of the feet to really do what they're designed to do. We can do that through some barefoot exercises, and I'll show them some.
Yeah, so to break that down, the one thing that my athletes are more annoyed about than talking about string theory or lacrosse balls is me telling them to take off their shoes before they walk in the gym. So every single time I train with any of my athletes, we're barefoot at all times. And the reason this is again, we spend all of our time in these comfy, cushy shoes. We're soft, or a soft society. We're just walking in these swaggy shoes, but we're rooting that proprioception from the foot to the rest of our body. So the more time we can spend in here, really just get that message relayed, the better. A couple of exercises that we want to show here, and this is what I've had recent success with a lot of my athletes, is just doing a couple of these proprioception exercises before a plyometric or a lift, just feeling wise, or just focusing on how are we focusing on our foot and what are we feeling through this foot. So what we're seeing here is just a dynamic shifting of weight here with Mark, and he's going to have to squeeze and spread those toes to really stick to the ground here and work on that balance just a little bit. It's not so much the balance that we're working on, but it's just waking up that foot in quotations. Another one that we can do here is, I call these toe curls, but we're spreading those toes as far as we can when we pull them up, and we're also going to spread them down and squeeze them into the ground. Again, just taking our time with these, all it's doing is drawing attention to our foot to where we really don't have a lot of attention spent all of our day, when we really should spend way more time. I read a quote in a book the other day, was talking about the uglier looking the foot, the more likely you are to see that athlete in the Hall of Fame, and that's because that athlete is constantly using their feet, which you're supposed to do. It's the athletes today that grow up in these big shoes like we mentioned that really don't have those active toes. So get active toes, get gross feet.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about ankle mobility, and we touched on this, and the importance of ankle mobility and being able to get into those positions for us to rapidly and efficiently produce force. So just a quick exercise. I do want to reference back to the calf video we posted before because it's got a lot of good exercises and talks about that range of motion. But one thing specifically, we'll just simple exercise, looking to create more dorsiflexion in the ankle. It's something a lot of people struggle with, and we talked about shin angles in that last video. And if we can get into a deeper dorsiflexion, we can decrease that shin angle, increase that shin angle. So one thing, literally just get into a lunge and trying to get on the ball of the foot and just creating as deep of an angle as you can here and working through that range of motion a couple times. And again, stressing the importance of being on the ball of the foot because that's where the majority of our force is going when we're playing sports. We should be striking with the ball of our foot.
Yep. And then, so the second part that we mentioned, if you were paying attention to our beautiful faces earlier in the video, is not only is it mobility, but it's that strengthening of that foot. And the best way to do it, and it's going to sound simple, but it's to do stuff that causes a lot of force to go through your feet. So what's the most forceful thing that you can do? It is sprinting. So if we're able to sprint with good mechanics and really strengthen an ankle through sprinting, that's one of the best ways to really strengthen that foot and ankle. Thing that we have to worry about there is looking at our technique and making sure that we're strong enough to actually do that so we can progress. A couple things that we do is tempo runs before sprints. So not before sprints in the same day, but building up so we can build up that connective tissue in there. Tempo runs is a 75% run. And what we're doing there is building a volume on that connective tissue to be able to strengthen that foot. Again, another thing that we talked about in the calf video is extensive hops. So it's not as dynamic of a hop, but we're really just building that stiffness and working on that dorsiflexion in those ankles, in that foot. Good, so the last thing that we got a question about when we told people that we're doing ankles and foot this week is how do we counter that terrible turf toe that a lot of guys with weak toes deal with. And the biggest thing that I've learned is that you need to gain mobility into that big toe as fast as possible. So we can do a lot of toe curl exercises, we can do a lot of distraction stuff where we're really twisting that toe, but we really need to gain mobility back into that big toe as fast as possible and then go through our corrective strengthening exercises to get to the next point, which is the stuff that we've already mentioned, going barefoot more often, but building up the strength back in there once we get the mobility back. If we don't have mobility in that big toe, and you'll be able to tell if you put your finger underneath your toe and then curl, if we're not really able to curl there, we don't have a ton of mobility in that big toe, everything's gonna be stuck. So not only does everything start with our ankle starts with our big toe. So that's the bottom of that stream. So if our big toe really isn't open, we're gonna cause a lot of issues up the stream. Making sure we're taking care of that big toe, taking care of that foot.
All right, guys, thanks for joining us on this Anatomy Tuesday. Love covering the feet this week. Can't stress it enough. So important. Take care of them. Work on your balance. Work on your strength. Get barefoot.
Be a beast. Subscribe to the YouTube videos. See you next week. We've got a ton of content coming up.
Nice.